Welcome to the Adoption Side by Side podcast, because no one should have to walk the adoption journey alone. I'm Andrea.
And I'm Steph. We walk the journey together and would like to walk it with you if you'll have us. All right, well, welcome today. We are excited to have Becky Merryman from Building Arizona Families back with us. She helped my husband and I with the adoption of our little boy, and she is just extremely knowledgeable on adoption from the mom side of it, but also the adoption caseworker side of it. So she might be a guest in the future again, too, because she's just very knowledgeable in it. So today, though, she's going to talk to us about the matching process for what her agency does, but probably is what is similar for all agencies whenever it comes to matching families. So welcome, Becky, and thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course.
I know your last episode that we did is one of the ones I feel like has stuck with me the most, your advice on parenting adoptees. And so it meant a lot to me personally. So thanks for doing that on already.
Yes.
Well,
so
good.
setting the
Thank
stage, of course. So setting the stage for what is matching? What does that mean whenever we say we've matched with an expectant mama or expectant family for the adoption world?
I mean, it is at that point where you have, you've looked at a situation with the birth mother and you want to present, birth mother has seen your information and she wants to connect with you. She chooses you to be the prospective adoptive parents for her child. So at that point, that's being matched. So kind of like matchmaker, you know, you're online and you put your stuff out there and somebody else puts theirs and, you know, you connect online. There's no other way to describe it as that. I even describe those first meetings or first phone calls with between the birth parents and the adoptive parents like a blind date. So
what values would you say guide your agency when you're helping families move towards that potential match?
I want to say open and honest, providing as much information as we can to prospective adoptive parents so that they're not in a situation that they're like, we did not sign up for this. I think that we value that of providing as much information as we possibly can. We never want our families or our birth mothers, expectant mothers, to be in a place where, you know, there's a family walking out on them in the hospital. And we never want adoptive parents to feel like they're trapped in a situation that they feel like they're not capable of taking on, and trying to respect it all the way around. I believe, honestly, that value of being open with this about the situations.
Absolutely. And then how do you balance the logistics with the emotional and then the ethical weight of the process for both sides?
That's kind of a hard question. I mean,
there's a lot that's in that question, I feel like.
Right. I mean, for the birth parents, so that they do not feel pressured, trying to offer as many options as possible to them. And sometimes we don't have a lot to offer. So that's kind of because of their situation, where they're from, or just the timing of it. I mean, we may have a situation where we have like 8 or 10, 15 people who want to present, but that exact same type of situation 6 months later or 6 months earlier, we couldn't get one to present on it. So ethically, just feeling like, okay, how do we go to a birth mom and say, well, we've got only one. That's it. Right. If you want to move forward, we don't have anybody else.
Right.
And we have told birth mothers I mean, unfortunately, if we can't find a family for you, we're just not going to be able, we're just going to have to refer you somewhere else.
Okay.
We have done that.
Right.
It's
Do
hard.
do you have like a network kind of other agencies that you're able to refer people to if that would happen?
Yeah, we do have some other places, or I might reach out and say, hey, do you guys have families for this situation? We just recently had a situation, and I had to reach out to we try very much just to reach out to find families. But if we do have to refer them, we do help them find an agency that we can get them to that would help meet their needs. Typically, we're reaching out to all of our contacts across the United States saying, here's the situation. We need a family because this birth mom deserves, she deserves to be able to, make her adoption choice. And we're looking for families. And most of the time, we're able to pop up at least with 2 or 3
So
families.
then is that where the consultant group comes in for you guys? Or is the
Yes.
consultant group, and I'm going to refer to our case just because it's where we match. So like when our expectant mother walked in, you had maybe families to present to her. Were we among those first, or did you do like the families that you had within your agency and then you talk to the consultant group, or how does that part work? Like when do you reach out to Journey or other groups like that?
Sometimes we'll reach out to them at the very beginning, depending on what the
Okay.
situation is. If we have a case where we know that it's going to be hard to find families for, we will reach out with our whole list and to consultants. If we know, we know what those situations are. If there's a risk of health issues with the baby, beyond just substance exposure. I don't want to say just substance exposure, but just beyond that. Or if there's a situation such as, the Indian Child Welfare Act, it's so limited on families for that. So on those hard situations, we will reach out to the consultants across the nation.
Okay.
But a lot of times most of the time, our situations will get sent out to our entire list. If we do not have responses within a week to 2 weeks, or we only have 1 or 2, at that point, we'll send out and say, hey, we need some more families. Do you have anybody who might be interested in this situation? Which is where your situation, came in.
Okay.
We
Right.
did not have the families to present on that one. So we reached out to get more families.
Okay.
Because we always want the moms to have a choice. I mean, this is
Absolutely.
the most important decision they're making in their entire life. So.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Do you mind just briefly touching on the Indian Child Welfare Act? Because that's not one that we've covered yet on the podcast. And I mean, it's something we were briefly trained in as we looked at cases, but maybe just for our listeners, you explain why that might make a case a little more difficult for finding a matching family for.
One, it's very difficult to find states that you can work with. So with the Indian Child Welfare Act, the federal guidelines do not require tribal notification, but there are some state regulations that do require tribal notifications, and in those situations, that's a whole court case in itself that is involved. I don't want to go into all of the legal stuff of it because I'm not a lawyer, but just a little brief. So we have very limited states that we are able to work with. It obviously limits the families that we're able to. At this point, we are only able to work with Alabama, Illinois, and within Arizona.
Okay.
We have done some with Georgia. We used to be able to work with most states, but there was some changes about 4 years ago that just changed how things were done in the court proceedings for ICWA. With ICWA cases, birth mother does have to go into a court before a judge with an ICWA attorney and sign consents in front of that judge. It's her ICWA consents. She can't do that until 10 days have passed after she delivers. So that court date is typically 11 to 14 days after the baby's born. So that does scare families off because of that additional time. Also,
Right.
till finalization, that and the right parental rights are terminated with that your finalization hearing, those consents are revocable. So that in itself is
Right.
just thinking about it like, oh, she could change her mind and I've had the baby for 5 months,
Yeah.
It's not an easy process. It really is not an easy process for that to happen. I've not had it happen.
Okay.
But it is that risk out there, and you're just adding another risk. And we know with adoption, as adoptive parents, there's so many risks along the way. It's scary to add that one. I just try to assure people that it is not an easy process for it to be revoked. And, 99% of the time, birth mother is making this choice because she wants what's best for her baby.
Right.
So she's not going to go change her mind.
So walking this matching process with your expectant families first, what does the journey look like when the expectant parent first comes to your agency or first calls the agency? What are the first steps and things that are done with them?
We do their intake process. That sometimes takes a day. It sometimes takes a couple of weeks to get their intake completed. We want to make sure that they are up and stable, that we've got them in stable housing. We've confirmed their due date by ultrasound. Getting a feel for, where they are. Obviously, we want to make sure that they're far enough along that people would be interested in matching. We work to get their budget set up. If they working or not working, doesn't matter. We still have to get a budget set up, get all of that turned into the attorney for that to get approved so that we have fee amounts that we're able to pass along to the adoptive families. The fees associated with its adoption are XXX, and then we also ask them what they're looking for, what they're open to. Are you, we've got all of the check boxes: heterosexual, gay, lesbian, married, not married, single women, or don't care, with children, no children, certain parts of the country, Arizona only. So we ask them what they're looking for. Sometimes, I should say sometimes, we always put the cases out to all of our adoptive families, just in case there's birth mother sees a family and she's like, they're not what I thought I was looking for, but they are what I want. If that makes sense.
Okay.
And I do that specifically because of our personal adoption story, because we weren't what birth mother was looking for, but we were the family that she wanted. Right. So, so right. I always say, even with two adoptive families, or when we present to birth mother, we say, I know this is outside of what you were looking for, but they did want to present to you, so you can look at them or you don't have to look at them. It's up to you. So that she has that option, because sometimes you don't know. There's just that connection. And again, that's the way part of it was with us was, we didn't match what she was looking for, but when she met us, we were the ones. So,
right.
I think that it's important that birth mothers, we always let them know when they're looking at the profile books. One, you have the option. You can look at them. We answer questions for them. After that, we get them all settled in and we aside from the adoptive parent side of it, we get profiles for the moms. They can take them home. Sometimes they just want to sit there. We tell them they're confused. Like, what am I supposed to be looking for? And most of the time we just tell them you're probably just going to have that gut feeling. Like, this is the one.
Mm.
When you look at it. And I think a lot of them do have that. It's just that initial, like, this is the one. I feel drawn to this family. And it's just that feeling. Maybe it's the motherly instinct inside of them that's telling them this. But we will present everyone that says that they want to present to the birth mothers, and trying to let them have the time. Sometimes birth mothers will be given a few profiles and they're like, we didn't find any. So we're going back out trying to find more families. And again, we're reaching out to all of our consultants, trying to find more families, because they're just not finding a family that they feel like they felt a connection with. And trying to make them feel pressure.
Right. That kind of goes with our next question, but before that, is this a process usually when they're looking at the profiles that they are in person at your office, or are you ever doing it electronically?
90% of the time it's in person with us here at the office. Sometimes they want to just have some alone time in the office. So we let them sit in an office and look through the books. Sometimes they want us sitting in there with them, so that they can ask questions. And then there are times, again, like they want to take them home so they can look through them. But sometimes we have moms who are just like, can you just email me the profile so I can just, do this all on my own.
Okay.
But that's very rare that we're just doing them like that.
Yeah. How do you create that space where the expectant moms feel supported and not pressured?
I guess I think the only time that we ever feel like we're scared about pressure is when we don't have families and we're very limited. Like, this is all we have. So we're very sorry. The rest of the time, it's just like, find the family that you feel is right for you. Hence the reason of us sometimes having to go back out and, okay, let's get it out. Let's get her out again. And let's see what we've got. Like, well, we had some more families that registered, or did you reach out to this consultant, or wait, there's an attorney over in Florida. Did we send to, we're looking at where can we reach out to find more families? So I think that's offering support instead of pressure, because we're trying to find what she's going to be comfortable with. But yes, that fine line of of pressure is when, and I think we feel it ourselves. We're feeling pressured, like because we don't want her to feel pressure.
Right.
Here, we've got one, or we've got three, and that's all we have. We've tried. This is all we have.
Right. Now, kind of in the same regards with that, are there ever times where you sit down with the mother at the very beginning of maybe the intake information, and you talked with her about other options outside of adoption, or once they've come to you, they're kind of in the no, I know this is what I want? How do you handle those situations?
When they first come to us, we sit down and talk to them. We talk to them about, why are you making an adoption plan?
Okay.
What led you to making an adoption plan? Getting a feel for, is this real that they're looking to do an adoption? Do they understand what adoption is? So the intaker will have that conversation. And there's times that, we've got moms and they're like, if I had some way to parent, I would. And they were like, hold on. And we go get a bunch of resources and we bring them in, and here's this, check these out. And then see if you can find something that's able to help you, because some of them think that they don't have any other option but to do an adoption. And that's not always the case. When they're in that place, they're also, the odds of them going through with the adoption is not, really high either. So we don't want them to feel pressure We also want them to be happy with their decision, and we also want to guard an adoptive family's heart and your finances along the way. So if a mom comes to us and she's just like, I just need, if I had some resources, and then we're like, well, we have resources. So check these out. If after checking these all out, you still feel that adoption is best, then come back to us.
Okay. So then with that as well, if they're kind of on that fence in a way, do you have counselors that they can also then talk, like, is that one of the resources, a counselor that they can talk to talk through that mental and emotional side of it that needs to be talked through?
We have an outside counselor, and sometimes we'll just say, hey, we're going to set up, we had an intake, it will come in on our chat. We had an intake, she came in, she's still just not really sure about it. So we're going to set her up with counselor, and we set her up with a counselor, and then we go from there.
Okay. All right. So just not the whole list, because I know that you do a very extensive background of both birth mother and birth father. And as a family that is from your adoption agency, loved that. I loved the pages of pages of pages, because it made me feel like I was being able to make what's the word I want here?
Like an informed
decision on yes or no, did we want to present? So what is some of like the pertinent big information that you ask for on that intake form from the expectant family so that the adoptive families can make the informed decision?
The biggest thing is we tell them this is a judge-free zone. There's no judgment. We need you to be open and honest, because we're not going to judge you, but what we need with your honesty is so that we are able to find the exact family that's going to love you and have no judgment and going to accept where you are in your life right now. And just the biggest thing is that open and honesty and no judgment. And we've told them we don't want, if you're untruthful, but you match with a family and then truth comes out, you don't want a family that you've fallen in love with saying, we're not capable of taking on this situation. And we don't know what adoptive families are or what they're able to take on and what they're not able to take on. And you need to, so again, just pushing the honesty with no judgment so that they get matched with the right family.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
And biggest things on honesty is any ongoing illnesses that would be hereditary, obviously substance use, and mental health diagnoses.
Right. Okay.
And then what kinds of counseling or support services are offered either before the matching, or is that something that isn't particularly discussed unless maybe needed?
For the birth mother?
Yeah.
The expectant mom. She meets with the intake worker. There's support with that. She is assigned a case manager. So that case manager is assigned to be her support and walk her through everything, talk with her through the process. And then we do our counselor, the outside counselor actually is in our office once a month. And so all the birth mothers have that opportunity to talk with the counselor. We do require that they talk to the counselor. I say we require it, but we also can't force them to talk to her. But they are offered the counseling and their case manager, and our whole team. I mean, our moms come here to the office, so we are all here for them. How many times, countless times that we're like, after a birth mother has signed consents and she's kind of done with the program, we're always like, we're here. You don't have to come back pregnant to come back. You can come back anytime.
Right.
For you.
Okay.
Yeah. And I love how that helps build a relationship and a connection outside of you are expecting and there's a baby involved, but it's about you as a person.
Right.
Sounds like an extended family forward.
Absolutely. And we all work very hard to have, show that compassion. And I mean, from everybody that's here in the office, from our bookkeeper, our administrative assistant, to the case managers, to, our receptionists, we all engage in conversation with them. And, they're here, they're our clients, and they need to be cared for and loved through this process.
Mm-hmm.
And just as a person, because they may not have ever gotten that.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
How do you help them identify what they want in an adoptive family? So like if they come in not knowing what they're looking for, when they're looking at maybe the profile books, how do you help them like, okay, yeah, this one I do like, so I'm going to put them in the maybe pile, and oh, not sure about this one. I don't think so. How do you help them if they're having a little bit of struggles there with those topics?
The case managers typically, like, sometimes they're just like, I really like these two. And it's not pros and cons, likes and dislikes. Like, okay, what is it about this family that you really like? And what is it about this one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what is it that you're not really sure about? So kind of, it is pros and cons, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You're just trying to figure out,
Yeah.
Right.
what is making you really like them. But if you were looking at it and being like, I'm not sure about that, but you're fine, this one, that's great. So it's really just which one you feels best for you, which one you like the most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Talking through it then. Okay.
Yeah. You're really just helping them
Sometimes
identify their own preferences, values.
Right. And sometimes they're having a hard time. So we're just like, okay, we have the outside counselor sit and do the books with them.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's helpful. Or we set up phone calls. All right. You can't decide through 2 or 3 families. So let's set up phone calls. You can ask the family questions. You get a feel for them as real people, not just as a book.
Right. Now, are those phone calls always just phone calls, or are they sometimes Zoom or FaceTime?
Yes. Sometimes there's Zoom and FaceTime.
Okay.
And
all right.
Now on the adoptive family side, what preparation happens with the adoptive families before they are shown to an expectant parent?
Well, a lot of our families come to us through consultants. So they've already been having this, this guided, an education. When a family comes into our program, not just for a specific situation, they may come to us and they may have already had education regarding some adoption. We have additional education requirements that we do require for our families. One is we require the attachment and bonding in adoption. So if that was not done, your situation may not have had that, because I get you guys were kind of a little bit quicker of a match. So
told that whole month there. Yeah. Because you said that, I was like, oh, I don't remember that one. Like,
yeah.
But there were podcast episodes we had to listen to. Would that have been in that? Okay, then we did do that.
It would have been part of. Yeah, it would have been part of that. We also, since your placement, we have added that we do require the NAS, some education in NAS, and the bonding and attachment with a child through adoption. And what is the other one? Is transracial adoption.
Okay.
Those are 3 things that we are requiring for adoptive parents to take. I mean, we're not saying here's some, we give suggestions, but we're not saying which ones they have to take. We're like, if you jump on YouTube, watch a 30-minute, 40-minute video, we will accept that as part of your education. But we do require some of those education for our family, just because it's unbelievably a reality that some some states do not require adoption education for completing their home study. So,
Oh, we didn't, did we? I had nothing to complete our home study.
Nope, we did for Pennsylvania. There were not courses we had to take
No.
to be home study approved. There were courses through Jack we had to be.
Yeah.
When
we
so
were
I
doing
guess
our-
PA would be one of those states.
Our consultant group, and since we were all kind of signing up with them, I mean, we signed up right after a home study, both of us, but
Right.
you're often doing it simultaneously. So Journey was providing that for us and giving us like an education credit requirement. But yeah, I guess our state would be one of those that I don't remember anything on the education side. And now that you say that, that is pretty surprising. Like in our case, like our caseworker sat down and talked with us about why do you want to adopt, and did the whole like she did one of our podcast episodes and mentioned how if a family is maybe just learned that they can't have biological children, they maybe encourage them not to rush into this right away, like have you processed. But I don't remember anything like have you taken a drug exposure type of class or training?
No.
Have you looked into transracial adoption? They ask, are you open to that? But yeah, that is interesting. I never thought of that because we were already receiving it through another source.
Right. And that like those were all ones that Alex and I specifically made sure we took
Right.
as part of our court. Like we had to do the 10 through Journey, and we made sure those were, because those were cases that we were going to be okay with saying yes to, and we wanted to know as much as we could about it. So we we had that going into the starting of our matching process. But yeah, oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
So along with the education side of it, how do you help adoptive families with the understanding of what the expectant family is going to go through emotionally, grief, autonomy? How do you help that? Are there courses that you guys require? Are there conversations? Or is it just you walk them through it as it's happening?
I think it's more walking through as it's happening. I mean, we do have our intro sessions that we do require now for families coming into our program, except for in cases like yours where it was a specific situation. But other families who are looking to register with our agency, we do have an intro session. And we go through the process of what happens when an expectant mama comes into us and the intake process. And we talk about in that of needing to remember that she is her own person. You are not in control. You don't get to dictate what she does, what she doesn't do. Unrealistic expectations. Well, she's making a choice to do an adoption, so she's going to stop using drugs. Now, that's unrealistic. And needing to understand, which is why we talk about the NAS class. And we encourage families to understand substance abuse disorders, where she's not in control if she has an addiction. Also, only presenting on cases that when you've gone through there, you are comfortable with all of the information that is provided to you. Because we never want to present a family who is just presenting on all cases but not paying attention, and having an adoptive family walk away from a birth mom. Because the majority of the birth moms who come to us have already faced so much rejection in their life. And in this place where they're making the hardest decision, and this is what we say to adoptive parents. They're in a place, no matter what lifestyle they are in right now, this is the hardest choice, the hardest decision that they're ever going to make, and they need to be respected and loved. So if we do not want to offer another place of rejection.
Right.
So looking through the situation, which is why we try to offer as much information to the prospective adoptive parents so that they are being able to make an informed choice. We say, look through this, read through this, the only time we're asking for a decision right away is if we've got a baby born situation. But the rest of the time, you've got this. You have it for a week. Look through it, read through it, ask questions if you have questions. Don't just say yes or don't just say no on a case. Well, you might just say no because you might look at it right away and be like, no, I don't need to ask questions. But if you're saying yes, make sure you're making an informed decision, because if a birth mom picks you, you're 100% in.
How do you help adoptive families understand that they are being considered, but they're not entitled to a placement?
How we work with that is that we always just say every birth mother has a choice, and it's still back to, we don't force her to make a decision. We don't force her to choose a specific family. And everyone has a right to choose the parents for her family. It's not our choice. It's not your choice. And a lot of times they will understand. Sometimes they get really angry, like, we should have this case, but it's not our choice. It's the birth mother. It's not our baby. It's hers. So it's just a little bit more of just, it's not your choice. Hard to pill to swallow for some people who are entitled, but.
How many profiles are typically shared with the expectant family? And does the agency have, we only show X amount so not to overwhelm them? Or is it that give this many? Yes. How is that determined?
On average, we usually only get anywhere from 3 to 10 profiles to present to a birth mother anyways. But if we have a situation where we have, 10, 15, we'll start with the first 10 that said yes to it, start with that, and then add to it. Just because it can be overwhelming. You're taking all of these books home, and then at that point it's like, oh, well, are there more? Well, are there more? Because you had so many,
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Right. And that lends to our next question of keeping them from feeling overwhelmed.
Yes.
Do that. Okay. So then along those lines, whether it's the phone call to help solidify if this is the right family or not, or if it's just the actual, all right, we've said yes, not this expectant family has said yes. How do you prepare everybody for that first time phone call, meeting, connection time?
I usually send out and you probably got this in an email, we have talking points that we send out to the adoptive parents. And those are just articles that we've pulled from things that we have felt over the years that we've added into that, preparation of do a little bit of research on this and, read about it. We will talk and say, here's some topics that, it's not a good idea to bring up, birth fathers, or, how often are you using? We say don't ask that because of those are judgmental questions. Even though you may not think they're judgmental questions, they're very judgmental questions. So we prepare them for that. And again, using the dating analogy, this is a blind date. And you're scared. And we tell the expectant moms the same thing. You're scared. They're scared. They're afraid that you're not going to like them. You're afraid they're not going to like you. It's, everybody's afraid. Everybody's nervous. So, we're going to be there. We're on that. We always have one of our staff members involved in the communication. So, and that's something to help, if things are really awkward, we can kind of interject and get some things moving as far as the conversation's concerned.
So with a disrupted match, Becky, we know that those are a thing that can happen on either side of it. The expectant mom has made the match, but then something happens and she says no. or maybe the adoptive family is moving forward and something happens in their life and they're like, we just can't for whatever reason. How do you help both sides if that would happen? So like the expectant mom is saying, nope, I'm not wanting to continue. And I know you've put all those safeguards in place, but we know emotions and things can change. So what do you guys do to help with that process?
We do offer a counseling session. A lot of people don't like to take up because a counselor that we work with is here and it's a virtual counseling. Trying to just, be as compassionate as we possibly can. I mean, this is devastating. When I have to do a call, I'll tell the family, you know what? If you are surround yourself with people who are going to have compassion, not feed the hurt. If that makes sense. Because not everybody understands adoption, and they don't understand that there is that choice that a birth mother can make. So people who are going to be able to support you in your hurt and understand this is not any different than you having a miscarriage or a stillborn child, because you've put all your hopes and dreams, even though there's that separation, that, but your heart is already invested in all of that.
Right.
And that grief process is not any different. I feel personally, just because, parenting my kiddos that came to me through adoption, I would feel no different. I don't see how I could feel any different because of how much I love them and how much I felt. I feel like I would have died if our birth mothers would have changed their mind. I really feel like I would have died. I know my husband would always be like, it's okay. You need to step back. You need to step back. And I'm like, no, even though I knew I needed to guard my heart.
Right.
But just offering support, offering counseling. Often all of the ones that we work with that have consultants, we reach out to the consultants and say, hey, this happened. They're going to be calling. They need all of the support and love that they can possibly get right now. Just things that I encourage them to, walking through their grief, and just saying, hey, I'm going to give you a few days. You're going to have to start working through this. And, in a couple of days, you might be ready to scream at me. You might be ready to cry, whatever place you are in your grief, then let's check in. But take some time and let the grief come in and, allow yourself to have that grief time, that quiet time. Sometimes adoptive parents don't feel that they deserve to have a grief time. And I know that even sounds crazy, but they don't. They're like, well, I shouldn't. It wasn't my baby, but you got your heart broken, and you probably got your bank account broken. Reality.
Right.
In there, but just walking them through one little step at a time, because everybody grieves differently as well. So I also always encourage, don't let this stop you from following your dreams of becoming a parent or adding to your family, because this didn't happen. This is not what I say on the first call, because the grief needs a process, but the next, the next call, it's just that remembering that you do have a baby that's out there. It may not be conceived yet, or it's just you haven't met that birth mother yet. This one just unfortunately wasn't meant to be yours. And as hard as that is to hear, it's okay, because the one that's meant to be yours is still out there. And we're going to do everything we can to find that.
Right. And then flip side, how do you walk an expectant family and mother through that? Like if the adoptive family has backed out for whatever reason.
Those are hard.
I feel like that would maybe be even harder, because, she's probably been met with rejection and been told no often. And then she finally feels this peace, and like her life and her child's life can move forward. And then all of a sudden this big blow is thrown at her.
those are hard because in their mind, and we've been told that by birth mothers, like I thought they said that they loved me, and I thought that they said they loved this baby unconditionally. So what do you
Yeah.
say to that? You know, what do you say to that? Yes, it is hard. It is a horrible, horrible loss to us as adoptive parents. But to a woman who's making a choice for her child to be loved as like her love, you know, she's chosen this
Mhm.
family because they are promising that they're going to love this baby no matter what. And then they back, you know, then no, in her
Right.
mind, she's not good enough. Her baby's not good enough. And then in her mind is, yeah, nobody's going to love this baby the way I do. She'll never have the complete trust and faith that her baby's being loved the way she expected the baby to be loved.
Right. I was
So,
just thinking from like an
um,
adoptive parent side when the match disrupts, even though it's incredibly hard, it doesn't feel like a personal rejection. It's that, well, this mom is now choosing to parent usually, and we support that decision even when that's hard for us. But I'm sure in her case, if the adoptive family backs out, it feels extremely personal to her and her child. And
mhm.
yeah, that would be very, very hard.
Yeah.
How do you help both sides process grief without assigning blame to one another?
Um, with the adoptive parents, I mean, you know, there are those cases where you're like, we are pretty sure that was a scam, or we know it was a scam, and there is no way to process that without placing blame.
Sure. Right.
Um, but when the situation is where she just couldn't go through with it, um,
Mhm.
we can't place that blame on her. She had her choice. She Her emotions were there. She loves this child. She just couldn't do it. I mean, there's no way to place any blame on her in that situation. It was just too hard of a decision when it came down to it at the end. Um, and that's just walking the adoptive parents through that hurt. And I think they know where the anger is when you're in a situation and they're like, what, you know, how did we not find this out sooner? You know,
Mm.
that's a whole different grief, that and anger on that side. Those, you know, that's a really tough one to walk through with adoptive parents, but it's just one step at a time. We just step through this, you know, walk through the grief, and we walk through it with them as best that we can.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
For sure.
and then with the birth parents, um, it's more offering more support and counseling to them, because we still want, most of the time they're still in a place where they need to do an adoption. They're not in a place to parent. So now we have to walk through the fact that they were rejected, their child was rejected. So, you know, that's fine. We're going to find a family that's going to love you and love your baby exactly, and it's the family that was really meant to be for for the baby. We just didn't find them sooner. And
Right.
just again, support through case management, support through counseling.
Mhm.
Adoptive parents, were giving resources, obviously involving the consultants when there's a consultant involved as well.
Mhm. Yeah.
It is the worst part of our job, by the way.
Oh,
Those
yeah.
days, those are the days that we hate our job, like we literally hate our jobs. Before it's the call, we make calls to, you know, we're talking to everyone, all of us are talking. And then we're having to try to build each other up to make that phone call. And yeah, it is the worst part about our job.
So leading into the birth of the baby, what does support for both families look like? So how does the agency continue to support the relationship as a whole, but then separately, and creating that birth plan for adoptive families so they know what expectant mom is planning and what she wants and how they're going to fit into that?
With our agency, we have our team has two teams. I'm a sports fan, so we have our offense and defense. Our non-sports people in the office say we're not a team, we're not a sports team. Looking over my coworker that's in here with me. Um, so we have our two sides of our team. We have our birth parent case managers, and we have our adoptive parent case managers. We all work together as a team because we want to have the best outcome, which is a successful placement, and being able to make sure that this baby is taken care of. So the birth mother, she will meet with her case manager weekly. And she will, the case manager will walk with her. She's had offered counseling. And again, even though the counselor does come in here once a month, birth mothers are offered, they can set up appointments outside of that. We will get them transportation if they need more counseling outside of just that one time, or once a month counseling sessions. So birth mothers, given that support and walking them through, how this is looking, how they're feeling. I have parents, adoptive parents ask all the time, well, did you ask her if she's still okay with her adoption plan? And I have to say, we don't ask them all the time if they are still doing their adoption plan, because if we're asking them, we're putting doubt in their mind about their choice.
Right.
What we're doing is walking them through the steps, positive steps of placing their child for adoption, not putting doubt, not trying to put doubt in their mind. So that is a question that we do not ask. The only time that we ask that is when there are red flags that have popped up. And then the adoptive parents are assigned a case manager once you're matched. Until then, you basically working with our match specialist. And then after that, you move on to your case manager. Case manager is the one that's in contact with you, walking you through the process, giving you updates on birth mother. We try to set up as much communication as the birth mother is open to, encouraging adoptive parents to send little notes in the mail to the birth mother, especially if she's not communicating or not willing to get on a phone call or a FaceTime, that the adoptive parents are sending her little notes that they're thinking about her, because then that right there is building a relationship, even if it might be one-sided. And many times the expectant parents just don't want to do those calls because they are afraid of being judged. They don't want you to see who they really are. And they're afraid that if they do that contact with you, that you'll back out because you're seeing who they really are. And in their mind, you are this perfect unit where you've got a house and you've got cars and a job and everything, and they're not there in that life, Right. So it's intimidating to them as well. So it is hard to get that communication going. Our encouragement is, listen, if you are really wanting to have post-adoption communication, you should work on building that relationship now so that you and the adoptive parents are more comfortable with it after the baby is born. So we do try to encourage that. And we also, as I said earlier, all of our communication involves somebody from the agency. So unless an adoptive parent and a birth mother are both on the same page of saying, hey, we want to have direct communication, we want to be able to text each other back and forth, we don't encourage that, but sometimes those situations do come up. But it's with us so that we're able to offer support on those calls and make sure that nothing is no lines are crossed, or privacy violated.
Right.
Yeah. Now, how does the agency play a role in helping the expectant mom create her birth plan? And then maybe what do we talk about between them and the potential adoptive family with the boundaries, with like being at the hospital and what her wishes are for if they see baby right away, if she has time with baby, what does that look like from your side of things?
So about anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks prior to the due date, the case manager sits down with the birth mother, and we have a form. We have a form for everything. So we have the hospital plan and we actually complete this with the birth mother just to walk her through it, for her to be thinking about what it should look like or what it will look like, what she wants it to look like, give her encouragement. If there's too much of bonding that she's wanting to do. And after I go through it, I'll go back over that. So we also send this to the hospital social worker so that they have that, or it might be sent to labor and delivery desk if birth mother goes through, or we know she's there at the hospital and it's, after hours, social worker's not there. So it has the basic information, her name, her case manager, phone number, adoptive parent case manager and phone number, the first names of the adoptive parents. We talk about what hospital she's planning to deliver at, and who does she want in the delivery room. So first choice and the relationship to her, second choice and the relationship to her, so that she's stopping and thinking about who she wants in there with her. And then the next question, would you like the following? Do you want to, a lot of them know the gender, but do you want to know the baby's gender? Do you want to see the baby immediately after birth? Do you want to see the baby later in your room? Do you want to be the first to bottle feed? Other questions we ask, will you be naming the baby? If so, what is the name that you are choosing? If birth mom says that if she's saying about seeing the baby immediately after, or these questions open conversations as well. So if she's talking about seeing the baby, we will, the case manager will say, well, sometimes when you deliver, they will take the baby and they put the baby directly on your chest. And this is a really, we will talk about bonding and how that initial bond sometimes makes it harder on them to, once it's time to say goodbye at the hospital, or see you later. And so, we do recommend that they not do that and, talk about the concerns. We don't ever suggest breastfeeding, but if a birth mother talks about breastfeeding, we talk about the bonding and how that will be a difficult bond. It will be difficult on the child and her. So just, pointing that out to her. And most of the time, it's very, very rare that we have a birth mother that does breastfeed, but we don't encourage that. In fact, we do discourage that just because of the bonding on all sides around. And we do not to pressure her, but just trying to protect her feelings and her emotions in the process. And then also, telling her how that affects the baby as well with that bonding. We talk about the second band, the adoptive parents receiving the second band, so that, we talk about that because if there's a birth father or a mom or an aunt or friend that's there, we want to make sure that that second band doesn't go on someone else that would be able to go in and have access to the baby. That's not necessarily a party to the adoption. And we also want to have that so that the adoptive parents, and we talk about, we're wanting the adoptive parents, you're going to want them to get in there as soon as possible so that they can have bonding time as well as you with the baby, and having that second band so that you are able to do that and not somebody else in there with the baby.
Mhm.
We talk about how often they want to see the baby or have the baby while they're there at the hospital. Where would you like the baby to be? Like if you want the baby in your room, but you want to sleep, well, where do you want the baby? Do you want the baby to go into a nesting room with the adoptive parents if that's available, or the nursery? Can the adoptive parents be in the nursery or the NICU with the baby? Are you okay with that happening? Do you want them to have that time there with the baby? Do you want the adoptive parents? And we have sometimes where we have birth mothers. Robin is one of those adoptive parents where birth mother wanted her or her husband with her. So they had to take turns. One was in the NICU, one was bedside with her, and they switched for 3 days. That's what they did.
Wow.
And we've also had it where, birth mothers just want the adoptive parents in with her. And so that's something that I think it's a good bonding experience for the adoptive parents, but it's also extremely emotional
Right.
all the way around. All the way around. Also, how much contact do you personally want with the adoptive parents? Do you want them to come to your room and visit with you? Do you want them to call us first and check with you first, or check with the nurses first? And we talk about being discharged with the baby or being discharged separately. We talk about the pros and cons of both that. Any additional requests that they may want. And they'll be like, what do you mean additional? Well, do you want the adoptive family to bring you a strawberry milkshake? Just random, trying to make it a little bit lighter. So that's what we go through with the birth mother. After we've done that hospital plan with her, if she's struggling with it, we will actually hold off on that hospital plan and have her meet with a counselor and have the counselor go through that hospital plan with her.
Okay.
And then from that, we call the adoptive parents and we go over the hospital plan, what to expect at the hospital. You get an email with about 15 attachments, and I say, read through every one of these attachments. Please, it's important. And then, not that any of them are going to ever get that one specific situation, but we walk through the hospital plan, what to expect, which hospital you're going to go to, if they have nesting rooms, how much the birth. We just go through that with the adoptive parents, walking through those expectations. And we also don't leave you alone at the hospital. I shouldn't say we don't leave you alone. We don't we don't say, hey, she's in room 254. Have fun. We don't do that.
Right.
We're going to meet you at the hospital. You're going to land. We're going to say, hey, call us. And then we're going to say, we're going to meet you. We meet you at the front door. And we take you up to meet birth mother, meet baby, get you settled in the hospital. Then we abandon you. No, we don't abandon you. But make sure that you're settled and comfortable before we take off and leave you at the hospital.
Right. Now, Becky, with all of that, how does it work? Like if a family like us was coming from a different state, we specifically talked to our case manager and said, should we be coming in like the weekend before the due date so that we're there? And she advised us not to do that because, as we all know, babies can come whenever. Well, if the expectant mom is wanting adoptive family to maybe be in that delivery room, how do you explain if there is travel time that's needed to the expectant mom that, okay, everybody's going to try and make that happen, but we have to remember they're traveling. And if you go into labor at 12 a.m. and we call them, but baby comes in an hour, but they have a 3-hour flight, that's not possible. Like, is there that understanding that it's not always possible because of that?
Yeah, we do walk through that.
Okay.
When a birth mother is adamant about that, one will say, okay, are we going to look at a scheduled induction? Because that's the only way we're going to be guaranteed of that.
Right.
Because even if we say, hey, okay, you really, really want that, we don't have an induction, and the family, you plan to come like 3 days or a week before the due date because the birth mother is very adamant about wanting that, the baby could come before that,
Right.
and it be a last minute situation, or you could be stuck out here because she may go over a week or two,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're stuck. Which, if you were stuck out here at this time of the year in Arizona, it's the most expensive. You might as well be in Hawaii. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's so expensive to stay here right now. So, it is just walking through, again, not knowing when the baby is going to arrive. We usually just say, listen,
Right.
just come. We are going to call, and we tell the birth parents or the expectant mothers that, we're going to call them as soon as you go into labor. So as soon as you start feeling like this is happening, you need to call us. So one, we can get you to the
Mm-hmm.
hospital, but also so that we can get the adoptive parent on a flight here to get here as quick as possible.
Right.
And most of the time, they're very understanding about that. And baby will typically just go into the nursery. Sometimes birth mothers will keep the baby with her, but a lot of times the baby will go to the nursery and just, wait until you have arrived.
Right. Okay. How does support continue for the birth family after baby has been born and placed? What's in play to help them continue on with their life now that the placement has happened and then consent has happened?
Yeah. We try to encourage them to make some life changes for their child that they placed. That's a really strong thing that we encourage. Detox, rehab, whatever, that kind of a thing. We also try to get them to make just better life choices. We do, in our program, we do provide it's same case management and living expenses for 6 weeks after the baby is born. So they're still coming in here and meeting with us, and they may not sit and meet with us, but sometimes they do just come and and meet with us, talk with us. Counseling with the counselor is open to them, to anybody who will take that. Support from us, from the staff. Talking to them about, we do try to talk to them about their plans after birth before. I shouldn't say we don't, we try.
Mm-hmm.
We do talk to them, what are your plans? What are you going to do after? And then we try to guide them in making good choices and continuing on. Again, they can take us up on that offer. They don't have to.
Right.
Typically, I shouldn't say typically. They sometimes they stick around, and then I think that they stick around till they feel like, okay, I'm okay. Does that make sense? Like, yes, they're
They've
hurting.
processed it.
Yeah. Or sometimes they're like, I can't come around there because it's too much pain.
Yeah.
But we do
Right.
offer counseling. What we have available is we have resources for housing that we will give them if they are willing to do that. Resources for rehabs if they're willing to do that. We offer counseling with our counselor. They can come back at any time and have counseling with her. They can come back anytime here and sit down and talk with one of us here in the office. They can reach out to us at any time. We have a clothing closet they can come into anytime. That's available to any of the women who come in and whether they're pregnant or not. We also have a food pantry that they can come and utilize if they need food. And that's throughout their pregnancy. And then, of course, after, they can come in at any time. So we really just tell them we're always here. And we're always here for you with what you need. If you need assistance, we aren't able to just do handouts, but we definitely will help you find some resources.
For a little big picture reflection, what would you say is one misconception about the matching process that you wish more people understood?
That the birth mother has her right to a choice. It really truly is just understanding that, realizing that you may look at an expectant parent intake, and you're like, ah, that's a mess. That doesn't take away her right to make the choice for the child.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's
I,
it.
I didn't think until you're talking about people, maybe like an expectant mom is reviewing profiles, but doesn't want to have that phone call because maybe her life feels very messy compared to this like picture perfect book. And here's your house, and here's your married couple, or strong single mom, or single woman wanting to be a mom. And I never thought about what kind of like a power imbalance that is in a way. It's unintentional. It's not something that an adoptive family wants to create or present. It's just kind of the nature of the situation. But that has to be a little bit scary because I don't know, like here's our perfect life. And what you're handing in is the hardship in your life right now. Like you're coming to the table with this is the situation I'm in for whatever reason. And then here's these families that we're seeing the good side kind of thing. Whereas we're all just people who've all made mistakes. And just because we're maybe in a situation at this time in our lives, we're saying we're ready to be a parent to a baby doesn't make them less of a person or less worthy of a decision and choice and respect. And yeah.
So then with all of that, Becky, what is one or two things that you would say advice wise to families or expectant moms entering into adoption?
I think to adoptive families is to go in understanding you are not in control and you're not going to be in control. That is the biggest part of adoption, is not having control and facing that reality and not being afraid of the birth parent. Not having fear that they're going to come back and steal this child away from me someday. Not have fear that, I think there are adoptive families that just completely live in fear of the birth parent. And that's not healthy for you parenting. It's not healthy for your child ever. That type of a fear. Remembering that birth mother made that choice and she chose you to love her child. Respect her for that. No matter what lifestyle she's in, respect her for that. And be honoring if she's changed her life around after that situation. Don't be in fear that, oh my goodness, now she's going to want the baby. No, she still wants the child to be loved by you. So that's big advice to adoptive parents. For expectant parents, I would say, you are making a very strong, brave choice, and it is very hard, and we get that. And we're going to do everything that we can to support you through that. And we're going to find a family that's going to love you and respect you no matter what.
Okay.
That's it.
Right.
Well, thank you, Becky. We really appreciate you being willing to join us again. And this is such an important part of the process that we always touch on, that match, that special moment, but we appreciate the behind the scenes look on what that is like for both sides as they enter into that process. So we're going to take a minute today to close in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for Becky, for building Arizona families, for all that they're doing to bring families together, to create these relationships built on openness, built on trust and communication and respect. And God, just thank you for the wonderful work that they do. And it's a big prayer to pray for all the families out there waiting for their match. But we do that today, especially for anyone who is listening, who is in one of these situations, whether they're an expectant mom or they are a hopeful adoptive parent or couple who is seeking to find that match and seeking to grow their family. I just pray that you will guide their steps, that they will know that there are resources available, as Becky has described, that through agencies, they can have their needs met. They can receive counseling and respectful guidance without pressure and without judgment. And God, I just pray for them today. It's a hard on both sides, but especially for expectant moms on that side of making this big choice. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode. You can find us on all major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and YouTube.
You can also find us at Adoption Side by Side on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube video for more adoption content and to follow